Okay, so that worked and didn't work in the sense that we had the good color, but the numbers are bad. See, let's try to simplify it. Okay, it was just this. Okay, we sort of discussed in the video yesterday that one of the things that's not taught in our like liberal universities and their what they're calling economics departments, it's not taught that our country does not and never did function on mysterious market forces that appear from nowhere, and that the thing is for our the state to like get out of the way. That actually the way our economy has always functioned is that there's a dynamic state sector, and public subsidy goes into the Pentagon system and NASA for development of the high-tech sector. That's where computers and the internet and satellites and computers and everything comes from. State subsidy that goes into the Pentagon system and NASA. When it goes into the Pentagon, it's called defense. But all the research that's done, whatever developments are made technologically, when they work, they are passed along to the private sector for civilian use, or that's how our economy was always built. That's also why we go and explore space. It's not to see what's on the moon, but the research and science that's necessary to find out how to do certain things, like send a rover to Mars or whatever. That creates all this new technology, which when it works is handed over to the private sector. Okay, those two mechanisms, the Pentagon, the fact that that's how the economy functions through a dynamic state sector and public subsidy to the Pentagon and NASA, that's like not taught in this free market mythology crap they're teaching. But if people were to be educated that way, they'd recognize that although billions and billions of dollars do go into the Pentagon system under the heading of defense, and certainly there still is NASA and a space program, it just keeps getting scaled back. But for some reason, all the research being done there, and much of it being, green technologies, new kinds of technologies, new kinds of, who knows what at this point, why that is not entering back into our economy in the way of, new waves of production, infrastructure projects, whatever science is developed would funnel through the community colleges and then into technical jobs and things like that. Why that would not be happening is because since 1971, we've been in a situation where a network of European banks have bought up so much of our currency, and what they like is stable currencies. So if we were to anything that would be released from the mechanisms that build our economy, once that kind of building of the economy starts, the currency dips in value, but that's not negative for us. That's a positive thing as far as growth is concerned. The minute any such growth were to happen, European banks in what's a very small network that formed in the 70s will start selling off our currency, and the whole country will collapse. But our question is, if all that's necessary is for people to become aware of that, and aware that what changed in 1971 was the dismantling of the economic portion of the Bretton Woods Agreement made after World War II, which was capital, the main regulated currencies, not a floating exchange rate, and capital controls, meaning should one of these, foreign banks buy up, several $billion of our currency, they can't sell it off. They can't just start selling it off because we're growing our economy. In Asian economies, they can't do that. If someone buys up that much of the currency, they have to hold it for 10 years. But if because we're the sort of essential state militarily, we certainly have the ability, if our president wanted to sit down with the leaders of other nations who are under this threat of capital flight from this network of banks and say we want a new Bretton Woods agreement because we're all in a situation of low wages, low growth, and our economy is disintegrating because we're under threat of capital flight, there could be a new Bretton Woods agreement. And this one, the original one that had it had a larger scope. It was the economic part of it was capital controls and regulated currencies. But then there was also the United Nations Charter and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and it was a much bigger agreement made. This is just the economic portion that was removed. Our president at any given time can sit down with the leaders of other countries who are suffering under the same situation and make a new. They don't have to do it in Bretton Woods, New Hampshire, but a new version of the Bretton Woods Agreement, and there would be negotiators from the different nations to come to such an arrangement. Is that all that's missing to stop what's happening? Wages that keep getting lower, no work except like in a behind a cash register, and a mass incarceration of sort of like being treated like a disposable population. I mean, is that all that we need? Are people to ask that we want our world leaders, our leader to sit down with the other world leaders of countries being wrecked this way and ask for a new Bretton Woods agreement? Or does part of it involve the fact that this liberal education parts of it have to be quarantined until actual, like people who know about the structural features of our economy can educate students economically without this free market mythology and tell the truth about the role the state plays in the building of our economy? And once all that happens, we could have a society again? That's the question for us. Trying to work this into a better format since we seem like we got it slightly correct.